Fumiya Tomozaki, an unattractive and friendless guy, spent most of his time playing video games. He discovered that his favorite pro gamer was Aoi Hinami, a popular girl at his school who found him repulsive and aimed to transform him. After school, Fumiya played Super Attack Families, TACFAM, against Shuji Nakamura, a popular classmate. Despite Nakamura's advantages, Fumiya won twice, but Nakamura blamed the game. Later, Fumiya played against No Name, a skilled player, and they agreed to meet at school. The next day, Fumiya met No Name, who turned out to be Hinami. She was disappointed that the top player, Nanashi, was an unimpressive person in real life. Fumiya defended himself, arguing that life had no set rules like games. Hinami criticized his appearance and attitude, calling him a coward for not taking action to change his circumstances. Hinami took Fumiya to her room and demonstrated how changing appearance could alter perceptions. She revealed her past struggles and offered to teach him the rules of life, comparing it to a god-tier game. Fumiya, intrigued, agreed to learn from her. Hinami explained that life was as engaging as TACFAM and set goals for Fumiya: improve his posture and appearance, get a girlfriend, and speak to 3 girls. With her guidance, Fumiya embarked on a journey to transform his approach to life. Fumiya Tomozaki decides to tackle the task Aoi Hinami assigned to him. Remembering her advice to be straightforward, he asks Yuzu Izumi if she has any tissues. Yuzu doesn't, but asks Fuku Kikuchi behind her, who provides them. After Yuzu hands him the tissue, she leaves to speak with her friends. Tomozaki uses the tissue, but Yuzu asks why he's grinning like the Joker. Embarrassed, he explains that he has a toothache and is grimacing, not grinning. Next, Tomozaki heads to his class to talk to Minami Nanami. When he arrives, Minami isn't there, so he waits. Minami eventually speaks to him, causing him to panic. He manages to respond, but Minami laughs, saying he speaks like an old man. Hanabi Natsubayashi arrives and asks what's funny. Minami explains and Shuji Nakamura and his friends join, asking Tomozaki to repeat the joke. They don't find it funny, leading Minami to call them dumb. Tomozaki notices Hanabi looking at Nakamura strangely. Nakamura asks them to vote on who is weirder between him and Minami. Hinami intervenes, telling Nakamura to stop picking on Tomozaki and calling him immature. She mentions Nakamura's ex-girlfriend preferred real men like Kento Minami. Hinami challenges Nakamura to prove himself by beating Tomozaki, and he agrees. After Nakamura leaves, Minami and Hanabi thank Hinami for standing up for Tomozaki. Later in the sewing room, Hinami commends Tomozaki's efforts but notes he blew his nose in front of Fuka and grinned like a scarecrow. Tomozaki admits he made things awkward. Hinami assures him he will improve and explains Hanabi's dislike for people like Nakamura. The next day, Hinami tells Tomozaki to practice talking in groups. That evening, he joins a conversation between Hinami, Minami, and their friends. At the train station, Hinami encourages him to talk to Minami on their walk home. He asks Minami how she stays happy, and she shares her belief in facing the world with a smile. At a crosswalk, Minami asks if something is going on between him and Hinami. He denies it, saying a brinch like him couldn't bag a baddie like Hinami. The next day, Hinami tells him to practice introducing new topics and gives him flashcards with different subjects. She also provides a voice recording for practice. Hinami informs him he will spend his Saturday with her as part of his training. Fumiya Tomozaki meets Ao Hinami at the mall, slightly late but well-dressed. She takes him to a clothing store to educate his fashion reject brain, quote-unquote, dubbing it Character Creation Part 2. Hinami explains that mimicking a mannequin's outfit is like borrowing professional fashion sense. After selecting an outfit, she encourages him to ask the store employee to try it on. Tomozaki hesitates but eventually asks, albeit with some stammering. At lunch, Tomozaki inquires about their training. Hinami reveals they're merely having lunch before his hair appointment. She asks about the voice recording she gave him, and he admits he sounds different and mumbles. Hinami advises him to use specific words or phrases to improve. She instructs him to use only vowels during their conversation to express emotions non-verbally. Their server is Fuka Kikuchi, whom Hinami knows from home economics class. After Fuka leaves, Hinami informs Tomozaki that Fuka will be his first heroine, aiming to make her his girlfriend. She notes signs of Fuka's interest, such as having tissues ready and greeting him first. Tomozaki is uncertain but agrees to proceed. The next day, Tomozaki reports that his sister noticed his changes. Hinami congratulates him and sets his next goal, to speak with Yuzu Izumi twice a day. Tomozaki attempts to discuss their English assignment but fails. Hinami encourages him to persist. Throughout the week, Tomozaki struggles to engage Yuzu in conversation, however. On Friday, he asks about her cardigan, but she dismisses him, saying it's the same one she always wears. At the library, Fuka approaches him, noticing his frequent visits. She asks if he likes Michael Andy's books, and Tomozaki lies, saying he's a fan. Fuka asks him to read her book and provide feedback secretly. He agrees, and she bids him farewell with a secret handshake phrase. Later, Hinami advises Tomozaki to use this opportunity to get closer to Fuka, despite his lie. She warns him not to mention the author on their date. Tomozaki feels dishonest, but Hinami insists he stick to the plan. She announces he's passed his weekly task, gaining experience and leveling up to level 3. On his way home, Tomozaki finds Yuzu sitting outside the school. He asks what's wrong, but she snaps at him. He apologizes and starts to leave, but she asks him to teach her how to play TACFAM, catching him off guard. As Izumi and Tomozaki walk home together, Yuzu reveals she usually walks with Shuji Nakamura, who has been practicing TACFAM after school. She wants to prove him wrong after he dismissed her as useless. Tomozaki agrees to teach her the game at her place. At Yuzu's house, Tomozaki wins easily, explaining his techniques. Yuzu struggles but practices with a stopwatch. Tomozaki shows her a saved game between him and Aoi Hinami, encouraging her to memorize the moves to beat Nakamura. Yuzu questions the fun in mastering all moves, but Tomozaki explains that he plays for enjoyment, not recognition. He admits that he doesn't care about others' opinions and hates not meeting his goals. Yuzu asks if Tomozaki is happy being a loner. He shares that meeting a skilled gamer convinced him life was more than he thought. He encourages Yuzu to change if she wants. Days later, Tomozaki meets Hinami at a cafe. She praises his progress with Yuzu, but reminds him about Fuku Kikuchi. She gives him tickets for a date and a voice recorder to practice. Tomozaki accidentally plays a recording of Hinami teasing Nakamura, impressed by her effort to become Gushi. The next day, Tomozaki confesses to Fuka that he hasn't read Michelandi's books but wanted to read them with her. She agrees. That evening, Nakamura's friends take Tomozaki to the AV room for a rematch. Yuzu and Erika Konno join, and Tomozaki easily defeats Nakamura multiple times. Erika criticizes Nakamura for losing, calling the game stupid. Tomozaki defends Nakamura, saying the effort mattered. Yuzu backs him up and Erika leaves. Nakamura praises Yuzu and leaves as well, promising another match. Alone with Hinami, Tomozaki notes her unusual silence. Later at a restaurant, he mentions Nakamura wasn't picking on him as much. Hinami asks about his plans with Fuka. Tomozaki shows her the movie tickets, but Hinami declines, suggesting another movie after her club activities. Tomozaki feels excited about the prospect of an interesting life and agrees to go with the flow. Tomozaki reminds Izumi about Shuji Nakamura's upcoming birthday, sending her into a panic. Later, Takehiro Mizusawa approaches Tomozaki, complimenting his boldness and inviting him to hang out. That evening, Tomozaki tells Aoi Hinami about the invitation and suggests asking Yuzu to join them. Hinami agrees and Tomozaki decides to invite Yuzu. Yuzu initially declines, but Tomozaki persuades her by saying he also wants to buy a gift for Nakamura. Yuzu excitedly agrees. After school, Mizusawa notices Tomozaki's changes and asks if he's reading a self-help book. Later, Tomozaki receives an invitation to a group chat with Yuzu, Hinami, and Mizusawa, which he accepts after some hesitation. That weekend, while waiting for Mizusawa and Yuzu, Tomozaki feels anxious. Hinami tells him to use the outing to complete his task of making 2 successful suggestions. When Yuzu arrives, she struggles to decide on a gift for Nakamura. Tomozaki suggests he get something Nakamura would want, and Yuzu decides on styling wax for his hair. At the store, Mizusawa uses some simple wax on Tomozaki's hair. After buying the gifts, Mizusawa suggests going for pizza, and everyone agrees. Back home, Tomozaki texts Yuzu about the rumor of Hinami and Mizusawa dating, which she confirms is common knowledge. On Monday, Hinami tells Tomozaki that he failed his task because he only made 1 suggestion. She explains that a suggestion doesn't have to be good, but the presentation matters. Tomozaki argues, but eventually sees her point. In class, their teacher asks for candidates for student council president. Hinami stands up, and Minami Nanami also raises her hand, declaring she will make sure Hinami wins. Hinami tells Tomozaki that their meetings are paused due to student council elections. His new task is to become Minami Nanami's campaign manager. Tomozaki expresses concern about his ability to help, but Hinami assures him Minami won't beat her. Tomozaki asks Minami to be her campaign manager, but she declines, deeming him unreliable. Later, Fuka Kikuchi notices Tomozaki's worry in the library. She shares her insights on Minami's motivations, confessing she also wants to change. Tomozaki finds her confession endearing. That evening, Tomozaki reflects on Minami's motivations. The next day, he sees Minami campaigning with Yumi, her new manager. Minami apologizes for her earlier comments. Tomozaki also spots Hinami campaigning with Mizusawa. Later, Minami shows Tomozaki her manifesto needing assistance. He offers help, and she accepts, admitting she needs support. Tomozaki shares his desire to defeat Hinami, viewing her as a formidable opponent. Minami playfully agrees. They visit the gym to engage sports clubs. Minami teases Hanabi Natsubayashi. That evening, Minami reveals her drive to prove she can exceed second place, always trailing Hinami. The next day, Tomozaki and Minami continue campaigning. Tomozaki tests gym acoustics with Hanabi's help. Hanabi cautions him not to overexert Minami. Later, Minami reports she's promised first years air conditioners in each classroom. Tomozaki is confident they've secured first-year votes. Tomozaki gives Minami the campaign speech he wrote. Unseen, Hinami observes them, smiling. At the morning assembly, Aoi Hinami speaks first, mirroring the promises of Fumiya Tomozaki and Minami Nanami. Tomozaki is impressed by her persuasiveness. After Hinami, Yumi supports Minami before her speech. During Minami's speech, Tomozaki plays a recording from the second floor, helping her gain support. Outside the hall, they meet Hinami and Mizusawa, who congratulate each other. Mizusawa is surprised to see Tomozaki helping Minami. Hinami leaves, reminding them they're still rivals. Minami mentions rumors about Hinami and Mizusawa. On election day, Hinami wins. Tomozaki and Minami vow not to give up. Later, Hinami asks Tomozaki if he wrote Minami's speech. He admits it, and Hinami tells him not to dwell on the loss. Tomozaki accuses her of using their promises unfairly. Hinami advises him to keep secrets from Minami and shows him her phone, reminding him of his task to go out with a girl. Outside the library, Tomozaki hesitates to ask Fuka Kikuchi to the movies. She notices and asks if he's okay. He summons the courage to ask her out, and she agrees. Leaving the library, Tomozaki sees Hanabi Natsubayashi. She explains that Minami has been working harder since the election. Hanabi asks Tomozaki not to push Minami too hard, recalling Minami's desire to be first for once. The next day, Hinami reveals Minami practices earlier than her. Tomozaki is surprised. Hinami says extra effort is good but acknowledges some challenges. Tomozaki bumps into Minami, who invites him to lunch. He declines, later wondering if he missed an opportunity. That evening, he joins Hanabi to watch the girls run. Hanabi shares her past with Minami, explaining how Minami's persistence helped her to make friends. She reveals Hinami advised Minami on befriending her, but asks Tomozaki not to tell Minami. Hanabi supports Minami's goals, knowing she acts with genuine intention. As the weeks progress, Fumiya Tomozaki notices Minami Nanami sleeping more during classes and wonders why she's pushing herself so hard. Kikuchi tells him that Minami is trying to compete with Hinami. Fuka explains that as a writer, she can read people, but Hinami is difficult to understand. After leaving the library, Tomozaki sees Hanabi Natsubayashi watching the girls train. Hanabi expresses concern about Minami overdoing her training. That evening, Tomozaki asks Minami if she's overworking herself to beat Hinami. Minami says she doesn't want to quit because of one loss and will keep fighting to prove herself. The next day, Hinami is surprised to see Minami already at the field. As they run, Minami remembers her first game against Hinami and her team's loss. Back in the present, Minami trips, worrying Hinami. Later, Hinami expresses her concerns about Minami's strain to Tomozaki, who asks why Minami is so obsessed with beating her. Hinami says it's not her story to tell, so Tomozaki asks Yumi about Minami's middle school days. That evening, it rains, and Hanabi and Tomozaki are glad Minami can't train. However, they see Hinami running on the field. The next day, Tomozaki follows Minami to the train station and asks about the basketball game in middle school. Minami explains that after watching Hinami's team lose, she decided to be like Hinami. She realizes she can never shine as brightly as Hinami and leaves Tomozaki alone at the station. The next week, Hinami tells Tomozaki that Minami hasn't shown up for practice, worrying him. He overhears Hanabi asking Minami if she quit the track team. Minami confirms she has thought about it and decides it's the best thing to do. Hinami joins them and Minami apologizes for leaving the team. Watching their interaction, Tomozaki wonders about the real reason for Minami's decision. After classes, Minami calls out to Hanabi, saying she's heading home. Tomozaki asks her to go home with both him and Hanabi. Minami apologizes to Yumi and goes with them. At the train station, Minami tries to make small talk, but Hanabi asks if she hates Hinami. Minami admits she can never hate Hinami but feels inferior around her. She cries, saying she's envious of Hinami and doesn't want to grow to hate her. Hanabi comforts her, saying she's the best at putting others first and her number one hero. Minami smiles and hugs Hanabi. The next day, Minami apologizes to her coach and the track team, and they forgive her and accept her back. In the sewing room, Hinami tells Tomozaki his new task is to give Shuji Nakamura his present and speak to him for 3 minutes. After Yuzu Izumi gives her present, Tomozaki hands his to Nakamura. He asks him about the rumors of Hinami and Takehiro Mizusawa, which the girls later tease him for. Yuzu asks Hinami if the rumors are true, but Hinami assures them there isn't anything going on. Minami apologizes for her behavior over the past week and gives them each a cat keychain, which the girls love. Summer break begins, but for Tomozaki it means more tasks from Hinami. At a restaurant, Hinami tells him his biggest goal is to start dating Fuka Kikuchi. Tomozaki shouts in surprise, saying Fuka is too good for an ugly loser like him. Hinami assures him they have things in common and Fuka likes him. She announces they will have a pretend date and writes down places to visit. The first stop is a clothing store. Hinami helps him pick out shirts and gives him a backpack as a gift. Tomozaki tries to refuse, so Hinami suggests he buy her something in exchange. She picks out a metal badge, but Tomozaki thinks the trade isn't fair. After exchanging items, they go to a gaming store and play a round of TACFAM, which Tomozaki wins. Next, they go to a coffee shop. Hinami teaches him how to add people online and tells him to message Fuka. Tomozaki types out a message which Hinami reads aloud, embarrassing him. She tells him it's good and to send it. To their surprise, Fuka replies immediately, saying she's free to hang out anytime. Hinami concludes Fuka is head over heels for Tomozaki. Later, Hinami invites Tomozaki on a trip with classmates. She says it'll be a good opportunity to make male friends and boost his XP. His mission that day is to mess with Takahiro Mizusawa, as teasing is how guys bond. The next day, they meet at Minami Nanami's house, but her grandmother is around, so they go to Tomozaki's house. In his room, Minami searches for dirty magazines, but only finds game controllers. They plan how to get Mizusawa and Shuji Nakamura together. Tomozaki makes sure to give his opinions and counter Mizusawa's suggestions as Hinami instructed. After dropping off plates in the kitchen, Tomozaki bumps into Mizusawa, who points out he isn't using the hair wax he bought. Mizusawa shows him how to use it. When they return, the girls gush over Tomozaki's hair, and Minami teases the boys. After they leave, Tomozaki tells himself his summer will be fun with them around. The next day, Tomozaki meets Fuka for their movie date. After the movie, they go eat, but Tomozaki feels he's saying nonsense. He remembers the flashcard Hinami gave him and brings up a topic from it. However, Fuka says she finds it hard to talk to him, making him feel like he failed. On her way home, Fuka explains she struggles to talk with guys and enjoyed their date, actually. She wants to go out with him again, relieving Tomozaki. Walking home, Tomozaki calls Hinami and tells her about the date. She advises him to invite Fuka to see the fireworks, which he does once he gets home. On the trip, Hinami tells Tomozaki to suggest, tease, or disagree with Shuji Nakamura 3 times. She also tells him to befriend Mizusawa. They take a bus to the campsite where Hinami pairs Izumi with Nakamura. While starting the fire, Tomozaki asks why she paired them. Hinami explains she wants a break from seeming perfect. After eating, Nakamura suggests playing in the river. Tomozaki scares Yuzu with a crab, causing her to fall. Nakamura catches her, and the others are pleased. Later, in their cabins, Nakamura asks Mizusawa about cards. Mizusawa offers to lend some, then asks Nakamura about his ex. Tomozaki is grateful for the distraction. The boys discuss Nakamura's ex. He admits she texts him but doesn't care because of her appearance. Mizusawa asks Tomozaki what he thinks. Tomozaki says the girl is stringing Nakamura along, completing his task. Nakamura tells him to piss off, and the guys laugh. Mizusawa asks if Nakamura likes any girl. He admits he does, but she always talks about a guy she likes. Later, while Nakamura and Take arm wrestle, Mizusawa and Tomozaki chat with Minami, Nanami, and Hinami. Mizusawa shares what Tomozaki said to Nakamura. The girls reveal Yuzu admitted she told Nakamura she was interested in a guy. Mizusawa tells them Nakamura said the girl he likes told him she likes someone else. They all go to the girls' room to play card games. After the game, Mizusawa asks why Hinami and Tomozaki were so serious. Tomozaki realizes he forgot his task. Later at the bathhouse, the girls discuss getting Yuzu and Nakamura together. In the boys' bath, the boys are silent when they see Tomozaki's pipe. Take picks him up, and the others tease him. When Take drops him, Tomozaki sees Nakamura's junk. He tells Nakamura his sausage is small, causing the others to laugh. On the way back, they make Nakamura and Yuzu go together, while Minami, Mizusawa, and Take go together, leaving Tomozaki with Hinami. Hinami tells Tomozaki she's going to train him. She screams and hugs him, acting like a damsel in distress. As they walk, Tomozaki tries to step on an insect, but it flies up, causing Hinami to scream. When the bug flies away, Hinami asks Tomozaki to help her up. She holds onto his neck and looks at him like she wants to kiss him. When they go to the cabin, they all pose for a picture. Later that night, Hinami texts Tomozaki, and the two meet to discuss how Tomozaki fared during the trip. While they're talking, they hear someone's footsteps, so Tomozaki gets up to hide. Just as Mizusawa enters, he takes Tomozaki's spot and talks with Hinami about Yuzu and Nakamura and how the two were so dense and oblivious to each other's feelings. However, he says he admires how they are both so sincere, even though they're blind to each other's feelings. Mizusawa also says he likes how Tomozaki tackles every situation head-on, which makes him think about his own life. He admits that he feels like he's watching himself from a distance as he mindlessly went through life, and says he felt it was the same with her. Hinami tells him that she always tries to live up to people's expectations of her, and says that it is normal for people to pretend until they've found someone they're comfortable enough to open up with. Tomozaki, who's been listening to the two converse, knows that Hinami wasn't being honest with Mizusawa since he spent so much time with her. He knows she only shows him a side of herself she knows he could relate to. As they keep talking, Mizusawa admits that he likes her, but says he knows she doesn't feel the same way. He tells her that he planned on finding out more about himself and things he liked while he tried to get her to like him. Suddenly, Tomozaki comes out of his hiding place and apologizes for listening in on his love confession. Hinami explains that Tomozaki had run off when he heard Mizusawa coming because he didn't want him to misunderstand them. She then suggests they return to their cabins and try to forget everything that happened. The next day, they return home, and Hinami texts Tomozaki, telling him to confess his feelings to Fuka after their date. Later on, he meets Fuka, and while they walk to where the fireworks display was going to be held, he tells her about his trip with the others. When the fireworks display begins, Tomozaki realizes he didn't even bring up any of the topics he memorized from the flashcards. He asks Fuka if she finds it easier to talk to him, and she tells him that talking to him feels easier and more natural, which makes him feel really good about himself. When the display ends, he remembers Hinami's suggestion, but instead of confessing as she told him to, he tells Fuka they should head back. At the train station, he sends a text to Hinami, asking if he could call her, but she tells him that she would come to him instead. When she arrives, she asks if he confessed to Fuka, and he tells her that he didn't. He then explains that the entire time that he was with Fuka, he didn't bring up any topic he'd memorized, but when he asked if she enjoyed talking with him, she said yes. This made him understand that he found it hard to talk to her before because he wasn't being himself. Hinami tells him that next time that happens, he should have countermeasures in place, but he tells her that he doesn't need them. He said they were supposed to focus on whether he had feelings for Fuka or not. Hinami doesn't seem to share the same views because she feels that people saying they had to find themselves were stupid. She argues that going through life without strategies and goals was pointless, but Tomozaki tells her that setting goals and tasks as a reason to keep moving forward was wrong. However, Hinami takes it as him giving up on changing his life, so she removes the badge he'd given to her from her bag and tells him to return her backpack before leaving him alone. As he watches her train leave, he blames himself for ending a relationship he thought was blooming. Later, Tomozaki is in his bedroom playing TACFAM while remembering his last conversation with Hinami. His sister enters and asks him to come down for dinner. Before leaving, she mentions his recent revision to his old pathetic lifestyle. Downstairs, she points out that he hasn't picked up his phone all day and has received messages from a girl. Tomozaki checks his phone and sees messages from Fuka Kikuchi, asking him to go pick up a new book. He texts her back agreeing to go with her. They meet up and go to the bookstore, then to a restaurant. At the restaurant, Tomozaki confesses that someone had been teaching him to build his confidence and change his lifestyle. He admits to memorizing topics for their conversations, but notes that during the fireworks display, he hadn't used any memorized topics. He expresses his worry about losing his real self while enjoying his new life. Fuka tells him that she initially saw him in black and white, but as she got to know him, she started seeing more color. She assures him that he could keep being himself while enjoying his new life. That night, Tomozaki texts Hinami to meet up and talk. They meet at the same place they first met. Tomozaki tells Hinami that before meeting her, he thought life wasn't something to enjoy. He explains that life wasn't about strategies and plans, but about doing what you wanted. He tells Hinami that she can't beat him at TACFAM because she doesn't know what she wants. He decides to live his life while exploring his own identity and hopes to prove her wrong. Hinami disagrees, but agrees to try things his way. They go to a restaurant, and Hinami tells him his next task is to get a part-time job. On the day of his job interview, Tomozaki discovers that Takahiro Mizusawa also works there. Sometime later, he goes with Hinami, Nanami, Mizusawa, and Izumi to pick out an outfit for Yuzu's date with Shuji Nakamura. Yuzu tries on different outfits, but they can't agree on the best one. She turns to Tomozaki for advice, and he tells her she looks good in all of them. Another day, Tomozaki goes shopping with Minami and Natsubayashi. Minami insists on buying a weird-looking keychain because it looks like Hanabi. Tomozaki also picks up a keychain and gives it to his sister, who initially wants to reject it but accepts it when he mentions that Minami liked it. Tomozaki makes Hanabi go on dates with Fuka while doing his new job and playing TACFAM.